Today, we're going to talk about Psalm 19 and prophecy watchers recently, over the past 2 years, released the Psalm 19 project, and Mondo's really been the one who spearheaded that, and it's something that I absolutely love. The calendar is amazing. The images on the calendar are absolutely phenomenal. And I've seen the observatory, in the images. It just looks absolutely cool. And I just want you to give people a brief overview of the Psalm 19 project, and I'm gonna turn it over to you and just let you tell everybody about it.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how God, Psalm 37 verse 4 says, "God gives you the desires of your heart." And, I've been into astronomy since I was young, and then in college, I took astronomy, and then, I've had several telescopes, and then I had kids. So when kids come along, I had to be responsible. So I ended up selling the telescopes and wishing and hoping, one day the Lord will show me kindness and maybe allow me to get back into observing his heavens. And boy, has he ever been so kind. And so back in 2022, I started looking. My kids left. They all moved out. I was an empty nester, and I thought, well, you know what, Lord, I think I'm going to try to get a telescope because, of course, you know since that time, 25 years ago, you certainly could take images, but it was very difficult with CCD imaging and other things. Well, technology's come a long way, and so and relatively inexpensive. And so I decided, you know what, I want to see if I can get myself a little set up and start taking some pictures. And God had other plans. I didn't have this grand vision of the Psalm 19 project. It just kept morphing right in the nick of time. And I just was planning a little thing in my backyard. And through a series of a whole bunch of events, which I won't recount here, we just had several people come on board and say, what do you want to do? And I just said, I just want to share the glories of God's creation. Psalm 19, says the heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies above show forth his handiwork. And it goes on and on. We know in Psalm 8 as well that David says, "When I look at the stars and the moon and the sun and the work of your hands, what is man that you're mindful of him?" He was overwhelmed by the majesty of looking up the skies. And of course, now in our modern age, because of light pollution, people don't often look up. And so it's very different now than what it was even David. But in addition, I kept thinking, I just want to share what God has created. And so as we began to start thinking about telescopes, we had some very generous people come in and say, no, we want to help support what you're doing. What do you need? What do you want? What would be the best? And so through all that, we ended up building a very nice observatory. We have three separate telescopes. We have a 7-inch refractor, which again, for those that know telescopes, they will know a 7-inch refractor is a very nice piece of equipment. We also have a 11-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain scope on one singular mount. So they're both tied together. And then we have another um, basically 85 millimeter Takahashi scope for wide field on a portable thing where you can take. And the mount that we have is super sophisticated. The roof rolls off of the observatory, and then you just have the skies. And the mount, what it does is it's very technical. It just tracks whatever you put in there. It just tracks it as the Earth is rotating. It tracks it all the way around, keeps it perfectly in the center field of view, and it allows us to take long-term or long-time exposure pictures. And so that, to me, I'll just explain it in that some of our images, I might, they're 59 hours. And you go, well, how do you get 59 hours? There's only 8 hours of darkness at night. And you just go, well, what I do is I go out there and I do 8 hours and it matches it. And then the next night I go back, I take another 8 hours, and then I go back the next night, another 8 hours. And then you take all those images. Sometimes it could be up to 1,000 different images. And then you stack them together. And so these images, you look at stuff in the sky and it's relatively dim. I mean, these things are very dim because they're so far away. And just this is like the inverse square law of physics. The farther away something is, the dimmer it is of the light. But when you take all these images and you stack them together, it brightens it. And so you get to see what it really looks like. It basically is shooting you close in one sense. That's the equivalent. But you stack them all together, and this image just appears because all those photons are now just absorbed into the camera. And that's really the most amazing thing about it is this is open to anybody that is interested. There's a lot of technical hurdles for sure, but you take these pictures, you stack them together, and these beautiful images come out. And I will just say this, that I find it what I'm in awe of, Joe, is that, David is out there looking at the stars and he's seen the Milky Way, and that's overwhelming. But he's not seeing what we're seeing. And if he would have seen what we get to see close up through telescopes and the absorption of light, he really would have been blown away. And so we are the first really couple generations in the history of humanity that get to truly share the glory of God. I mean, really some of the first images ever taken with photographic plates were done in the 1890s. And so I have on our website pictures of some of those, and then you see what we can do today. So what we can do today, just in the last 120 years, is so outstanding. And God says, yeah, I'm giving you the opportunity to document this and to share with as many that are willing to see all the stuff that God has created.
Absolutely. It's amazing. And why don't you, if you don't mind, why don't you pull up your the Psalm 19 website and let's look at some of these images.
Yeah,
And
I'll share. So people go, they can go to psalm19project.com, or certainly they can go to the Prophecy Watchers website and find it. But again, psalm19project.com, it'll bring you here. And so you can just see here at the top, I've done a variety of things on this page. I've written quite a lot on just the idea of biblical astronomy and other things. As you can see just here at the top, people have asked about our calendars that we do. And then people have asked about, do you have them on metal prints? And we're like, yeah. So we've made them available metal prints. I'm not a big, seller of things, but some people have really enjoyed them. But what we do here, and this is the most important thing, is right here at the top, I have here all digital pictures on this page have no copyright. Please download and share them to the glory of God. So if you click on any of the images that we have here, they open it up, right click, and you can save it, use it as you can make your own calendars. You can put them on your own computers as screensavers. All the images are meant to be shared far and wide. It's just pretty good. It's just pretty great in the sense of what we're doing. But what you can see here is I have several articles that I've addressed through the last couple of years because people ask. Right here is the main flat Earth page. A lot of people talk about the flat Earth, and because one of the reasons why we did this was because I would see people, maybe they would look at a picture from NASA about, I don't know if you can see the picture on the back, like, the Andromeda Galaxy, which is one of my favorites. And a lot of people out there say, well, it's all fake. NASA has admitted these are created CGI, and that is simply not true. And so one of the things that we did, and I have it here, and I can go through and show a couple things that when we get to it, is we decided, well, we'll take our own pictures. So maybe those people out there that think that all of the pictures of space are fake, we'll take our own pictures. So I'm not connected with NASA. I don't love NASA. NASA is a very godless agency. There are some Christians who work for NASA, but for the most part, they promote an evolutionary idea and stuff like that. So they're not giving the glory to God. And so in that sense, I don't appreciate their perspective. But the images, what I've tried to do is go and see, like they talk about maybe the Andromeda or the Helix Nebula or something else. And I'll just point it to there and I'll take my own image. And then so I have some comparisons of what a Hubble image looks like, which allegedly, according to some, is fake, and what our image looks like. And you'll see that they're the same. And so this main flat Earth page takes us to a whole bunch of writings that I've done on that as it relates to what does the Bible really say about the heavens? What does science say about the heavens? If you compare a flat Earth mentality or a flat Earth theory, how does it compare with science? Again, when I look through the telescope and I take images, that's real data. I mean, I'm not a shill for NASA. I'm taking my own pictures. And so what does this show? How does this compare with what the Bible says versus maybe a flat Earth concept? And so one of the things that I talk about in there is the whole flat Earth mentality, or I would say assertions. They just don't match reality. They don't match what I can see with my eyeballs. And again, many of these people, I'm very cordial. I'm not condescending, because I have friends that are flat Earth people, and they love Jesus, and their desire is to defend the Bible. And so we both desire to defend the Bible. They love the Bible. I love the Bible. It's just, I think the problem comes is I think their interpretations of the Bible are hyper literal, and so they don't follow general rules of hermeneutics, and it leads them astray. It leads them to develop a theology that is incorrect theology. And then when they look at what's out in the world, like again through a telescope, there's a disconnect. But if you interpret the Bible correctly, and then you look what's out in the world, it matches very nicely. And so I spent a lot of time on that there, as well as a few other things that we created the Psalm 19 project for.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, since you're bringing up the flat Earth theory, right? It's out there. It's gained a lot of traction over the last few years, really. And so how can this project really help redirect that curiosity toward biblical truth?
It's interesting because one of the ways, again, if we click here on the flat Earth page, I'll just click on that. It takes you over here to this, and so you can see that I have on here um, other articles in the Psalm 19 Project series, and then what I do is I go through. I have a whole article about addressing flat Earth claims. I address those again, not only biblically but as well as scientifically. The big deal within flat Earth idea is the expanse or the firmament, rakia in the Hebrew. And so I wrote a very technical article. I'm not very technical. It was a technical article, but I think it's certainly approachable for anybody. But I wrote an article talking about what is the rakia in Hebrew, and it kind of I show where the interpretation by those in the flat Earth community about the linguistics of the Hebrew word. It falls flat. I mean, it really does in that regard. And so I have this set up as an introduction. And then what does the Bible teach about flat Earth? Because that's the main thing. Is look, we all love the Bible, and the thing is, are we interpreting the Bible correctly? So I have links here to several articles that were written by a pastor talking about again some of the ways in which those in the flat Earth community misinterpret the Bible. And he addresses many of them. He does a phenomenal job in 6 parts. And then the second section of this page is I just say, hey, what can an observatory? How can an observatory help? Many people will say, Mondo, taking a picture of something in the sky, allegedly another galaxy, doesn't tell me about the shape of the Earth. And I totally agree with that. But what it does, though, it helps us, it brings up questions. It again, when you look at these things that God has created out there, the flat Earth model doesn't have an answer for what they are and where they are, and for them, the flat Earth is the whole cosmos is very, very small. And so when you have these distances of trillions and trillions of miles, that's really hard for them. But again, when I look at these pictures and I go, how do you handle this? Where is this? Where is this? Billions of objects. Where are they? Billions of galaxies. I mean, in fact, billions and billions of galaxies. Where are they? And are they under this dome that is 10,000 miles up? And their whole concept cannot answer what we see out there. And so what that does is, again, from a logic perspective, it's recognizing the limits or the failure of a theological position to correspond to reality. God has given us eyeballs. He's given us ears. He's given us the 5 senses, which are reliable, and they're given to us in order to look at our world. And it's true. I mean, this when I go like this with my cup, the cup is really there. And if I find a Bible verse that says the cup isn't there, well, now I realize either my eyes are wrong and I'm holding this and this really isn't there. It's a delusion, or my interpretation of the Bible is wrong. And so that's where taking images of all of these things that God has created, and they're real, and they're there, and it's amazing the information that we know about them through spectroscopy, which is looking at light. And when you get into some of the technical details, it's amazing that when you look at a galaxy or a star, you can see what chemicals it's made of, and again, that just gets into basic chemistry and astrophysics. So these are the things that oftentimes those in the flat Earth community, they don't have an answer for. And so I address several other things in there as well about comets. Comets are in the news right now, 3i Atlas and others. And when you look at comets and other things, again, the flat Earth community doesn't really have an answer for where they come from because they're so periodic. And as well as just one of the things I spend a lot of time on is, I ask those in the flat Earth community, hey, look, if It's one thing if you want to have an opinion about the Bible, that's fine. Okay. But do your own research. Have an observatory and then show from your own scientific observations how your theory fits well with reality, with what corresponds with what we can actually see. And then, secondly, like with comets, according to a flat Earth model, make a prediction of where the comet is going to be in 6 months from now. Because in a heliocentric model where the sun is at the center and the universe is grand and the solar system is grand, again, it gives God so much glory. What happens is that when a comet shows up, according to that model, predictions are made. And it'll be like, hey, on December, for example, I mentioned this in one of the writings where there was a comet that came and they predicted where it would be in 8 months from now, according to, again, a normal heliocentric model. And so I went out 8 months later, and I went out there not with a computer. I went out there with my binoculars, and it said it was going to be right there, in the northern sky, and near the Big Dipper. I get my big 20 by 80 binoculars out. I'm scanning, and boom, there it is. And so, to me, the fact that looking at the sky and you can make predictions which conform to reality, that shows you something. It shows you that that model works. Where unfortunately the flat Earth model just doesn't work in comparison with science. And so I talk about that. Again, I don't mean this in an arrogant way at all. It's simply people, I think what's happening is people are confused. And there's some very persuasive people out there, pastors and others, who give these interpretations of the Bible, and they appeal to somebody, and somebody loves the Bible, and they're like, well, I love the Bible, and if that's what the Bible says, then I want to submit to the Bible. We all want to submit to the Bible. But their interpretation is simply incorrect. And so you can see here in section 2, I talk about this debate that went on between this pastor and this pastor, both believers. One guy's a flat earther, one guy's not. I talk about the experiments that took place with this. Here's just one of our pictures. And so you can see here, I just have it laid out in, again, what does the Bible say and what does the science say, or what does our observation say? So you can see I'll go back to here and go back to the main page. And so I'll stop talking for a moment. But this is kind of how I address that, because again, this is leading people astray. And what it does is also contributes to bad hermeneutics, how to interpret the Bible. And so many of these people end up all over the place, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, and you can tell by just listening to you speak that you're passionate about this. This is obviously something that you love to talk about. And how does it make you feel on a personal level whenever you do put those binoculars in the sky and you see that comet, like you're almost scanning for a needle in a haystack almost, and you actually see it? How does that make you feel?
Well, again, it's first of all, it's just awesome because I say this as well, that again, you got again, brothers and sisters, right? And we have disagreements, and that's fine. We love each other. That's the hope. Well, those in the flat Earth community, when they see these pictures, and I pointed out there is many of them will come online and they'll see these pictures from NASA, and they'll be like, this is a bunch of fake, and this is this, and I'm like, and if Christians do this, inadvertently, they're taking away from the glory of God. They're stealing God's glory by saying all these things are fake. And I've had people tell me that my images that I take with my own telescope are fake, and that I'm a liar. And I think, really, I, I can take the pictures, and then I'll ask them, have you ever looked through a telescope? And many of them have not. And so I say, look, you don't even need to own a telescope. People in the telescope community or the astronomical community, they love to show off their toys. And so you can go to a local star party, find one in any big city, and they'll have a star party. You go out there, and these people got these 20-inch scopes. You got to get on a ladder to look through, and they love to share and show it off. They're not necessarily Christians, but you can go out there, and you can look through the eyepiece and see these amazing things. And so what I say is, don't you dare steal the glory of God here. These are real pictures. These are real images. And what it does is, in their world, you have this dome, you have the flat earth, and you have this little closed system. In the real world, which can be proven again through our eyes and through science, the universe is 96 billion light years across. It's inconceivable. And so which one gives God glory more? It's the expanse of what God has created is so beyond our puny little brains. And God says, yeah, I did that on a Wednesday afternoon. What'd you do? I spoke it into existence. It was like this. And so this grandiose thing that is inconceivable to human imagination or even conception. God says, "Yeah, I did that in a moment. I spoke it." And so when I take pictures and I see a comet, I just think, "Lord, you are so big and I am so small." And when people come and try to steal that away, I think, "You're stealing God's glory. Don't do that. What you have here is nothing compared to the reality." And so when you just look at it from that perspective, which one gives God more glory? The one that is beyond infinite. And we know that God is even bigger. So to me, I'm passionate about that, to see Psalm 19:1 become fulfilled. The heavens are declaring his glory, and we get the opportunity to share that with as many people as possible.
Amen. And if people would get off of these phones a little bit more often and look up in the air. I mean, and that's the problem. I mean, so many people they have their heads down. They're not even paying attention to what's going on around them, and they're missing out on that glory that we see out there. I mean, it's something that I'm blessed. I live out in the country. I love to go outside at night and look at the stars. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And you mentioned comets recently, or just in one of your last statements. And that's in the news cycle today. You mentioned Three Eye Atlas. There's a lot of other things going on. I know Apophis is in the news as well from time to time. But in light of Jesus's prophecy in reference to the cosmic signs of the last days, how do you interpret these growing number of unusual astronomical events that we're seeing today?
I think that you bring up a good point. I think it might be good to share with people. So again, what was our point in the project? And originally, if you just look here, what is the Psalm 19 project? Part one. I go through it. I talk about four facets. The first one is simply just to share God's glory. That's facet number one. I got some pictures here. You can see some of the things of what we're doing. Just the majesty in this image. 5,500 galaxies. I've taken images as well, which are below, where I just take a picture of a few degrees. And just in our equipment, you see 50 galaxies right there. It's just phenomenal. And this is a Hubble image. There's 5,500. Obviously, Hubble is a far bigger telescope than ours. But the second facet, which is what you bring up, is we know Jesus said this, that there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and on the earth distress of nations, in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves, people fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And so we know that this is primarily fulfilled in the book of Revelation, as we know, Revelation 8 and other passages, stars and mountains and stuff coming out of the sky. But we also, one of the reasons we did this was because, for example, you mentioned Apophis. Well, Apophis is coming. It's coming on April 13th, 2029. It was discovered in 2004. We see Three Eye Atlas right now making the news. There's been several other comments over the past few years. And so especially Three Eye Atlas is an example, people are saying it might be an alien mothership. And so we're looking at these things because when the time comes, we want to be able to, and we will, as we've taken pictures of comets already, take pictures of these things and to make an assessment. What does it look like? Is it really a mothership? Again, Three Eye Atlas gets closer, we'll be able to do some of that as well as other things. And so we simply wanted to be available to address some of these things again from a biblical perspective. And then the third thing, here, evangelistic nature, talking about the flat earth. And so I talked about that early. But the fourth facet was simply to look at the idea and to explore the gospel in the stars concept, which again, that has been around for a long time, really since the 1880s. And so I kind of give a background of what that is. Francis Rolston's book way back, 1862, and then it was updated in the 1880s and later. And to talk about, did God put a gospel message in the stars and what that looks like? There's 12 different constellations of the Mazzaroth. The Mazzaroth appears in the Bible. I give all the references here. And so that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about is that concept real? How accurate is it? And what are the limits of it? And so again, and then just the rest of this, I'll stop here for a moment, but I just kind of talk about how the project developed and where we started and where God has taken it.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, and the concept of the gospel and the stars, as you was writing in your article, it's an amazing concept. Really, it is what it is, right? I mean, it's declaring that the heavens declare the glory of God. That's exactly what it is. Psalm 19, verse 1. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing here with the Psalm 19 project. And how does that gospel in the stars concept, how does that deepen our understanding of how God has written his redemptive plan into the design of the heavens?
Well, it's interesting because the first book I read on the Gospel of the Stars was probably in the mid 1990s. It was a book by a pastor in Florida, D. James Kennedy, and I was just blown away by the idea. And now, as we see, what we recognize is there is limits to it. You'll see some people go out and they'll give all these stories and these exact details because each constellation has some what they call decans, and so there's like a major constellation among, and then three minor constellations, and so you have like 36, and then it goes up into there's 88 full constellations, but at least as it relates to the Mazzaroth or the zodiac, and some of that is a little fanciful. I'll be honest, and to be transparent on it. But what do we recognize in Genesis chapter 1? God says He created basically the stars for signs and seasons and days and years, and I address all that again in another article I wrote about the eclipse. Because remember last year in 2024, there was all this eclipse hysteria, and so people are seeing, oh, this is an omen, and so I addressed that as well. And I'll make sure to have that article. I probably should have had it on here anyway. But there's limits to what God is saying. But nevertheless, when you look at the constellations, there is a tremendous history going back thousands of years. And what we see for example, in Babylon is we see zodiac, we see the common 12. This isn't rocket science. It's not even at its root mythology, because the sun, as we orbit around the sun, and you look at the sun, behind the sun is a constellation, and as we move, our observation, our perception changes where the sun is in those constellations. And again, every year is the same. You go through the whole cycle of 12. So those same 12 have been there from Babylonian times. You're talking like 1000 BC. And so they looked at this. They were master astronomers back then. And so they had their own idea. I think the original idea that God made certainly was corrupted by the Babylonians for sure. And so it's really hard to get to the root of what the original ones were. However, there are hints. There's no doubt there is a framework. For example, we see Leo. Leo always references a lion, and it's right next to Virgo, the Virgin. Well, that sounds awfully biblical. And then when you look at the different constellations of the zodiac, each of them have a story behind them, and even in their Babylonian sense. But if you look at that Babylonian sense and you compare it to the narrative of the gospel, you think, wow, there are a lot of similarities here. And so I do think that there was an original story that God gave and explained to Adam. I can't prove that for sure, but I think when Adam was looking up, there's no doubt these constellations are very specific. And what's interesting is, we're on what's known as the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy. And so most of the stars that we see are in that arm. They're very close to us relatively. But if you were to go any other place, if you were to go on the other side of the next arm over of the Milky Way galaxy, and you had a planet, the constellations would look far different. Who knows what they would look like there? Ours are very designed with their brightness, they're called magnitude, and their distance. And so perceptually, when we see them, we see the Big Dipper, we see Orion and its belt. And if you were to go any other place, they wouldn't look that way. They would have a whole different set. So these particular very specific set of constellations that God created are for a reason. God does everything for a reason. And so I think the idea of the Gospel of Stars, one of the best passages in my mind, which again I think it's one of those things that's kind of enigmatic, is in Romans chapter 10. Paul is talking about sending out missionaries, and he says, well, how can they hear unless there's a preacher? Well, how can there be a preacher unless the preacher's sent? And so he's talking about the need for evangelizing the world. But he says in Romans 10, but have they not already heard? And then he quotes Psalm 19. And so he says there that in the context of the gospel, that the stars have already gave a message. And it's not just a generic message of God's creation or his ability or his existence. You see that in Romans chapter 1. This is in the context of the gospel, but he doesn't unpack it. I wish he would have, but so to me, that gives, I think, some biblical legitimacy to the idea. Now, will it ever be as tight and nice as we see some people in these books? I mean, they have it very dialed in, and I think a lot of it, again, is fanciful, but I think the concept has value.
Oh, absolutely. It's all fascinating. So, of course, you can find all of this information at psalm19project.com or right there on the Prophecy Watcher website. Mondo, do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I would like just to kind of give an overview, not long, but as people go to the website, they can see, how this came. You can see here, again, just our first telescope that we got, a 6-inch refractor, and then we ended up getting a 12-inch CDK reflector, which was going to go on this mount. Here's the mount. Here's where you can see it is. And what we realized is when we first started this, I was like, hey, this is really good. And some of the donors were like, hey, is this the best that we can do with the setup? And I said, actually, I think we can make it better. So I ended up selling the big scope there after even though I got images with it. And then we ended up taking this 6-inch one, and we provided it to a friend in Virginia who has his own observatory. And so we really have 3 observatories now. We have one here in Oklahoma. We have one in Virginia with a 6-inch refractor, and also a 10-inch Meade Schmidt Cassegrain. We also have another observatory in Idaho with a 6-inch refractor from Stellar View. These are phenomenal telescopes. I highly recommend Stellar View telescopes. And so we ended up doing this, and I redesigned it. And so here's the new setup. You can see this is a 7-inch refractor now with the Schmidt Cassegrain on the back. And this little red thing here, if you click on this and you zoom in, if we go over here, this little red thing here, this is the camera. And if you go down here as well, these are the cameras here. And so it's just fascinating to see what, again, God has provided. So here's our little mini setup. Again, we could take on the road. And so in this particular video, if you want to say, well, how do you take the images? I did a whole video on how we take the images. You can see here the roof rolling off. Here's what it looks like. Here's our Idaho. Micah's in Idaho on his dome. And Brad's over here in Virginia. You can see his setup. He's got a very nice setup there. And then just going through some of the images, people can look at these. This, again, is a 2-hour exposure where what happens is we're tracking the object, and then we open up the camera. And for the most part, I take 5-minute images. So the camera's opened up for 5 minutes, and it's just soaking up the photons, and then it stops, and then it starts another image, starts for 5 minutes. Sometimes I'll do 10 minutes if the night's very calm. And so you can see just some of these pictures, but I'll show you something here as we go down. You can see our images are getting a little better as we got better and we learned it. But you look at this one. This is just kind of fun. You think, this is called the Dumbbell Nebula. And you can see there in the middle, there's a star that exploded, and the blue is oxygen and the red is hydrogen gas. And God just says, yeah, this is what I did. Look how beautiful that is. And he designs it this way. We go down, there's some other things. You can see, again, here's the Whirlpool Galaxy. Just phenomenal. I mean, this is an okay picture. I think we could do better now, and we have. But we also took a picture of the sun. So if people zoom in, you look at this, and it's great. If you look, this is a very detailed, you look over here as well. You can see the prominences shooting off the side, the way the sun looks. It's got all these like granules. It's just amazing. That was with the special filter. This was kind of fun. Again, I was just taking this picture and I was going for this thing in the middle. And I was like, oh, look at that. And I was like, well, wait, what is this over here? I didn't even know that was there. And so you look here and you can see all of a sudden, here is like 7 galaxies just sitting there showing up on the image. But if you zoom in, you get this of the one. This is called Stephan's Quintet. Again, these are all individual galaxies, just so huge and gigantic. And God just says, yeah, Genesis 1:16. I spoke those into existence just because I could. And so I won't go through all of these, but you can see some of the colors. these are just phenomenal in the design. God's an artist. He's an artist in these things. And let me go. This is the Crab Nebula. I'll just zoom in on this one. You just think this was, again, a star that exploded, and it came up and looks like this. And God's like, yeah, I have all these different pictures that are in the sky. This is one of my favorites, the Andromeda Galaxy. The resolution on these are just phenomenal. I've always wanted to take a picture of this. This is the nearest, the largest galaxy to us. It's 4 times as big as the Milky Way. So I'll just scroll through some of these. Again, you can see the picture, the colors. I'm not adding any colors to any of these. These are just how they took. This was a fun one where this was called the Virgo cluster. And if you zoom in here, you just look, and there's galaxy, 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 galaxy. I counted over 50 galaxies. I zoom over here. Oh, look at that. There's another one over there, another galaxy, galaxy. It's just, you want to talk about the glory of God. It's just phenomenal.
It is amazing. I mean, that's awesome.
Here's another one. This is the Rosette Nebula, which again is just beautiful the way God has designed it. It's like a rose. And you can see here again, the resolution on all these is just so big. You can zoom in far more than I am here, and you can see it. Let's see. Oh, this is kind of fun. This one is called the Helix Nebula. And it looks, I mean, what does that look like?
Looks
It looks like an eyeball. And so, you look at this, and God just said, yeah, there's a star there that blew up, and he designed it in such a way that as it blew up, it looks like an eyeball. So people call this the eye of God. And here's another fun one called the Horseshoe Nebula. And you can see, of course, there is the horse, like a seahorse. And over here is called the Flame. It's phenomenal. The blues and the colors and the richness. They're there. Just a few. Oh, okay. Here, this one is fun. This one's called the Bubble Nebula, and you go, oh, why? Well, if you zoom in, look at that. You can, what is that? It looks like a bubble. And again, you can zoom in far more on some of these things. And so, this one actually looks a lot like electricity. This is one of the Veil Nebulas. The colors are there again: hydrogen, oxygen, very phenomenal. And the Pelican, the Soul Nebula. There's our comet that we took, which again is kind of fun. If you just look here, it's really amazing what God has done. And a couple more here. Well, that's the last one. Just again, another nebula. So when you look at these things, what's the goal? Number one, God's an artist. His power is amazing. To me, I liken it to a similarity in going into the ocean, where you have creatures there that have never been seen before until the modern era, by probes and other things. So why did God create him? Well, he created him for himself. But now we get the privilege of, whether you're in the ocean or in the skies, the technology has been upgraded to such a degree that we can show God's handiwork to as many people who are willing. And why? Just to show how awesome God is. That is the reason.
Absolutely. And you use the word privilege. That's exactly what I was about to say. I mean, how privileged are we to be able to see that? So, like I said, once again, Psalm19project.com, or you can just find it at prophecywatchers.com. You can learn more about that. And how can people get in contact with you, Mondo?
Yeah, they go to Prophecy Watchers. There's a contact tab there. If they want a certain, maybe if they want a certain object to be photographed, or a certain, again, there's so many out there, people can see it. And, I have other things. I didn't realize I didn't have it on there, but I'll put it on there. I'll put it on there after this, where if people go there, I have a comparison with the Hubble picture and our picture. And we did pretty good. I mean, it's not Hubble quality, but it's super close. And so again, just the technology we have today, you don't need to have a telescope, a $16 billion telescope in the sky. You can have your own backyard telescope, and you can get great images with the technology. So God has really said, listen, there's no excuse not to see the handiwork that he's created. And, for all these people that deny the existence of God, I feel bad for them, because, again, not only is God power, his power is demonstrated, but his artistry, his creativity is just all put there. And Romans 1, that we have no excuse. The creation itself shows about his power and his divine nature.
Amen. Amen. Well, that wraps it up for today, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to thank you, Mondo, for joining us, and we're definitely going to have you back on. I believe our next show together, we're going to talk about the two witnesses, and I know a lot of people are going to want to tune in and listen to that one. But until next time, I want everybody to stay awake and keep watch. God bless.